Greetings everyone, I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion, as you can tell from the title up there. It is another entry in the Undertaker's Streak-A-Thon. Been a while since I recorded an entry in this. I'm not looking up the thing, but at least a year and a half-ish, give or take. If I'm remembering right, I think the last time I recorded one was in my childhood home. And of course, those of you who are constant viewers know a lot has changed since then. Yeah, moved a couple times since then. So here we are. I'm going to attempt in the next couple months to get through the rest of the streak so we can lay this to rest. And that is an intended pun, by the way, because I started this in 2017. A lot of starts and stops, so should try to get through the rest of it. It's just that now we're getting to the era of the streak where we have a good match and not so good match. Good match and not so good match. That's going to start in a couple matches time, but we'll get to that when we get to that. This is another rematch. This, of course, is the match that saw Undertaker go 19-0. This is his second of 3 Wrestlemania matches with the game Triple H. This took place at WrestleMania 27 in the Georgia Dome in front of a reported crowd of 71,617. Now that's the WWE number, so there's probably a little bit of kayfabe in there, but that's the number they were given. A buy rate of 1,124,000. Pretty decent buy rate, I guess. Now the match went 29 minutes and 25 seconds, and while I didn't time it, at least the last 10 to 15 of that is very, very slow, and I think probably a couple minutes of that could have been knocked off, partially due to the fact that we get into a lot of kicking out of stuff that probably should have, but I'll get to that when I actually talk about the match as a whole. The build-up for this, even all these years later, I remember the build-up for this, because this was near the latter end of the part of my wrestling fandom where I was really into it, still buying the games, watching every Raw, SmackDown, paying attention to the pay-per-views. Now, I don't watch like select segments. Every now and then I'll watch a whole Raw. Part of it is, of course, dependent on the fact that I do not have cable, so I can't watch it right away. So I have to wait for it to hit Peacock, or when I had Hulu, I could probably watch it the next day, but I don't right now. Cutting back a little bit on that stuff. Now, when Undertaker came back, the moment I saw him, I knew, like, oh yeah, we're gonna get into another Mania match. But the way they set it up, with Triple H and Undertaker just having to stare down in the ring and then just looking up at the Mania sign, that's all it took. And of course, them staring each other down. And of course, the build-up for this match between these two is how you would expect it to be. The promos against each other. Taker like, 18 men have stepped up and 18 men have been put down. And Triple H doing his usual game shtick towards Undertaker. The only disappointment here, which thankfully they rectified the next year, was they never referenced the previous encounter at WrestleMania 17, a decade prior at this point, which I think was a waste. Now, part of the reason for that was probably at that time because Undertaker was in the American Badass, big evil portion of his career back then, so they kind of not really mention a lot of the stuff that happened at this point in his career. As the years went on and we get further in, they're going to bring that stuff up a little bit more, especially once he gets to his match with Lesnar. Here, they're not going to mention it, and I know from watching wrestling stuff at the time, I was not the only person disappointed with that. But it did not hurt the build, it was just a little bit of a nitpick. Then we get to the match, and since this is late in the card, I'm going to bring up the whole card. There was 10 matches counting the 2 dark matches, which of course one of them was that Sheamus Daniel Bryan match, which ended in no contest. But this was number 6 on the pay-per-view card out of 8, and it was stuck between the I'm going to be honest, these are the 2 bathroom break matches. I mean, it was stuck between Cole versus Jerry Lawler, which ended in disqualification, and the 6-person mixed tag match where John Morrison, Snooki, and Trish Stratus versus Ziggler and Lay Cool. Yeah. Thankfully, we've gotten away from this type of crap. Even though we still do Celebrity Involvement Mania, it's not to the same like this. Probably the closest would have been last year when I went to Mania. The whole thing was Snoop Dogg. But of course, that was an audible, not something they had planned from the word go. Now, this late on the card, you know that these two are going to get their WrestleMania entrances in. Especially Triple H. I mean, that's the gag here, but his entrance is like this, and then his entrance was Sting, where you kind of see it live up to it. Triple H comes out first. In the original airing, he came out to Metallica's For Whom the Bell Tolls. Here, it is a Joe Johnston approximation. And part of me appreciates the fact that they did go with that, even though at times you can definitely tell like they are only copying just enough to avoid the copyright. But at the same time, I wish they'd been able to license it for a longer period, but knowing how Vince was when it comes to that back then, I don't see it happening. And then, of course, without that being an option, it also makes me wish that they had just done an instrumental version of King of Kings, because that still would have fit for this opening thing with the shields, echoing Sparta, and then him coming out in his barbarian outfit, and with the crown-like thing, and then segue into his traditional Time to Play the Game song by Motorhead. Of course, Taker has his good WrestleMania entrance. This is like a standard one for him. Originally, he came out to Ain't No Grave by Johnny Cash, which was his song around this time. Of course, it's replaced with his entrance music on the network, which is sad. Another licensing thing. But I believe you can still find the original airing of it on the YouTube. I'm going to look, see if I can find it. And of course, they get to the stare down, and then the bell rings. In the beginning of the match, they come out with fire. You know, they're going at each other. They go to the outside. Michael Cole's coal mine thing with the anonymous Raw general manager gets knocked over. They go to the different announce tables. You know, they try to put them through the announce tables and get knocked to the floor. They're really going at each other. With how the promos are, you know, these two have come to fight, and here they are going with all piss and vinegar right out of the gate. And of course, eventually, Taker delivers a chokeslam in the last ride to Triple H on the inside, and of course, Triple H kicks out of both. Because at this point, when was the last time that those moves finished off someone as high profile as Triple H? Those moves usually are for, steal a line from The Rock, those moves are more for putting away jabronis, or just looking devastating. And of course, Triple H also gets a pedigree in for a near fall. The thing I love about this portion of the match is that in their wrestling psychology and wrestling storytelling, you can see that these two know each other very well. Like, they're setting up for moves to get out of it, like, but then even with that, you could tell that even with how well they know each other, they're still gonna fall for their own stuff and get caught in the moment, and they'll pay for it. Like, or almost pay for it. Like, there's one moment where Triple H is doing the punches in the corner, and then Taker goes to do for a last ride, and then he gets out of it. And another moment where Taker almost looks like he's going to do a tombstone, but then he just turns it into snake eyes, and this is after countering one of Triple H's pedigrees. Now, as the match is going on, and like I said, I didn't clock it, but probably around the 15, maybe the 20-minute mark, is where my one complaint about the in-ring work and the psychology of the match, more so the in-ring work, comes in, and that is when we start to get a little bit of finisher spam, but we also start to get weapon usages. Now, Triple H, at various points in the match, hits Taker with 3 pedigrees, and Taker kicks out of all of them. Now, the first one I'll give him, because like the previous 2 years, when he was wrestling Shawn Michaels, Triple H kicks out of the first pedigree. And while the sell job is not as epic as that first one where Michaels kicked out of it, and then there's a zoom in on Taker's face, and he's like, Taker still does a good reaction where he's like, damn it! But of course, it's also one of those things where he's reacting like, I should have known. Like, if Michaels could kick out of this 2 times in a row, Triple H is going to kick out of it. So, Taker kicking out of the first pedigree makes sense. When we get to the second ones, this is where I think they should have utilized the ring better, especially that second one where he's closer to the ring, and with how Triple H pinned him, he could have done something like try to get his foot on the ropes, wily old veteran stuff, or try to grab the rope for a rope break. Now, I know this was a no-holds-bar match, but I think most of the time when they bring that up, it usually counts for submissions, so it wouldn't break submissions, but for pinfalls, it seems like that would still apply. I don't know, I'd have to look into the history of WWE no-holds-barred matches, but I think a rope break would still count. But if it doesn't, then that kind of goes out the window. But could have also been one of those things where they could have had Taker just roll out of the ring. That's another wily veteran move. So that little thing still stands, especially how close to the ring he was. Or also have it where they could have had it where Triple H, like when he lands, he's out of it for a second. The whole, the longer it takes you to crawl over and pin the person, the less likelihood you're going to get the pin. I mean, the only time that really ever worked where someone got the pin was the one time it shouldn't have, and that was Triple H versus Booker T. But that's for a whole other video, a whole other rant. Now, Triple H's second and third pedigrees are so close together, especially since it's also following a DDT to Taker on the chair, that this is where I'm like, ugh. But of course, as the match is going on, you could see what they're going for. They're going for the Triple H is throwing everything but the kitchen sink at the Undertaker, and the Undertaker keeps getting back up. And this goes with something I think in at least 5 matches after this, they should have thrown in there. With Taker being told by Triple H, stay down. Why don't you stay down? Why don't you die? Especially when Triple H is standing over him telling him, why don't you die? It's showing that even though Taker is getting on in years, he's this far into his career, the only time he's coming around is going to be for Mania, other than a couple times, like his 1 anniversary for Survivor Series and a couple other things. This is going to be his one and done match of the year. This is what he lives for. This is all he has left is his streak. He's not going to give it up without a fight. So, in that regards, the psychology of what they're doing makes sense. It's just you got to take it hand in hand with how much how much gaga, as Jim Cornette would say, they're doing around it. And in that regard, it's like you could give it a little bit of leeway, but at the same time, it's like, ooh. And to add the cherry on top, Triple H decides to take a little bit of video game logic, I should put it, I don't know if that's the right word for it, a little bit of video game gaga maybe, and decide to use 2 finishers to steal his opponent's finisher and use a tombstone on the Undertaker. And of course he kicks out of that as well. It's one of those things of how often when someone uses the opponent's finisher on them do they actually fall to it? Not that often. Not counting, them using the same finisher like Taker and Kane. That's different. And of course, Taker's really out of it. And something I'm going to bring up, of course, in the Lesnar-Taker match is how they could have ended it with what happened in that match. And one of my ideas is something they end up using here, which some people probably go, well, that would suck, using the same type of finish, a couple matches removed from one another. Or as Deadpool would say, well, that's just lazy writing. Well, here, that'd just be lazy booking, but of course there, that'd be excused considering the fact that he had a concussion in that match. But here, well, Triple H gets caught in the wrestling equivalent of monologuing. Undertaker puts the Hell's Gate on him, and at this point, I think it's been a while since he's actually won a match with the Hell's Gate, at least a high-profile one. Now, the year he debuted it, they really built this finisher up as something that could defeat people. I mean, they made Viscera, then known as Big Daddy V, bleed from Taker strapping this thing on. So it can be lethal when used properly. And he has Triple H in it for so long, and since, of course, the whole thing they've set up with no rope breaks or submissions, Triple H, he's not going to get out of it. But this, of course, is following Triple H going to the well and being like, well, if the chair's not working, my pedigree's not working, that DDT's not working, using his own finisher's not going to work, it's time to bring out my tried and true weapon, Sledgy Hammer. Sadly, Sledgy's cousin MC could not be in attendance for this. Well, Sledgy is what he was going to use until he got caught wrestling monologuing. And just the way he's flailing, that's a couple times he grabs the hammer and looks like he's trying to use it, but he's slowly losing the strength. And I love the psychology here. where you see Triple H slowly fading, but he's not one to give up. He's trying to get out of it. He's trying to get the hammer to use it, but he doesn't have the strength anymore. Taker's holding on, that wily veteran. He's going to make Triple H earn this streak breaking if he's going to do it. Triple H is holding on. He's holding on like a fish that's at the end of its strength when it's a minute or so from being reeled in. But in the end, he cannot hold on no more, and he taps. Now, unlike when he tapped out to Benoit at WrestleMania 20, it's not like... Which makes sense here, because he has less energy left in the tank than he did there. Here, you can tell he's at the end of his strength. He probably only has a couple minutes of consciousness left, if that. And he just goes like... The camera gets a good angle on that. The referee sees it, and he calls for the bell. And Taker is now 19-0 at WrestleMania. The streak continues for another couple years. And Taker still has plenty of Mania matches after this. I mean, he had a total of 27 Mania matches, and this is only 19, so that tells you how much longer we have left to go. But overall, this is a pretty decent WrestleMania match. Now, I have not watched their 17 match before this, so I cannot say if that one was better. I will say that one at least had better flow when it comes to pacing. This one, 29 minutes. Like, you could have cut maybe 9 minutes out of it, because I was watching this one when I was doing cardio at the gym on the bike, and as I was watching the last part of the match, because I was going to try to go on the bike until the match ended, I was looking at how many minutes I was on at the 30-minute mark, 35-minute mark. As I got to the 40-minute mark, I'm like, yeah, this match is going a lot longer than I remember it going, and it's like at least 9 minutes, and I'm talking about the actual part of the match, not the entrances and all that. But Taker and Triple H, we all know they're going to have to get that long match in, especially to fill this long run time. But with that, it's like you could have thrown one of the dark matches on the main card and made up for the cut time there, but that's just me spitballing it over a decade after the fact. But yeah, a match like this, especially with Taker getting on in years and all this, there's no reason that this needed to be 29 minutes, almost 30 minutes. This was like half a minute away from being a 30-minute match. And just looking at this, this was actually the longest match on the entire card. Think about it. Out of all the matches on the main card, this is the longest one. And this is the only match that went over the 20-minute mark. After this, the longest matches on the card were Orton and Punk, and then the main event of Miz versus John Cena. If anything, if they would have taken 5 to 10 minutes away from this, they could have given 5 to each of those other matches and even it out a little bit more. Or they could have given a couple more minutes to the tag team match with Big Show, Kane, and all them. But that's just me spitballing a little bit there. But it is what it is. Even with it being a little overly long, it is still a fun match to watch. But pacing-wise, that's and the overuse of finishers in the latter half, those are the match's two big flaws. I don't know if that's enough to say that the following match will be better, though, because I have not watched the next WrestleMania match, I think, since it happened. That's going to be the thing with most of these Mania matches. And a lot of these ones that we're going to be talking about next, I actually watched the night they happened, but I have not watched them since they happened. So it'll be about that. Now, the Lesnar one, I at least will have some personal experience when it comes to the portion. Now, next match is going to be what they build as the end of an era. This, of course, is going to be the Hell in a Cell match between Triple H and The Undertaker, with Shawn Michaels as the special guest referee. Till then, everybody.